All right, gotta get right back to it. So they decided there was going to be a king and a queen, and then they decided that there was going to be rules to this too. They were like, okay, so what if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? How do we deal with this? With the who's going to be next in line for the throne? So they started making some really weird um, ideas, and of course, so they were like, we want our lineage to like be strong. So first they were like talking about how the first son from the marriage was first in line for the lineage. And then later they were like, well, what if they don't have a son? And then they were talking about the concubines, and if that son was, uh, if there was a son from a concubine, then they would be in line. And then through marriage, they were like manipulating how each one could be more in line. Like one of the stories was where Enki was married to, well, there was a guy named Alalu, and he decided he was going to take the throne, and that's a whole nother crazy story. But he he got on the throne, and then he made a deal with Anu, who actually had more rights to the throne than him, and he made a deal with Anu, and he said, well, your firstborn son can marry my daughter, and then they will have the rights to the throne through marriage. And yeah, you have to read all this yourself because it's like it's a crazy how it parallels the stuff that kings and queens on this planet did. And I wonder if that isn't where they got their ideas from, is these stories. But what's crazy is they were doing this before they found all these um, clay tablets. Clay tablets and all that stuff was like dug up in the 1800s, and there might have been some before that they found, but they've been doing this for a long time. Um, royalty, royal families and stuff, and they're interbreeding with other royal families from different countries, but they're all related somehow, and it, yeah. So there's a lot of parallels there, and it's just mind-boggling. It really is. So, anyways, eventually get to the point where this guy Alalu decides they're having problems on their planet with their atmosphere, and they're trying to save their planet, and nothing's working. And then the Council of the Seven says, well, gold. What about gold? Gold would work. Gold would help us fix our atmosphere. It's got the properties that we need that would help. It's just got the right properties that we need. And I decided that was the plan. Well, where could you get gold from? Well, they knew that they could get it from a place that they called the broken bracelet, which is basically the asteroid field, and they knew that there was gold inside this area, inside that ring. They couldn't get it from the other planets. The other planets are too big, wouldn't have a chance. But they knew that there was gold there from a previous event that happened. So Olalu was on the throne, and he actually offed somebody to get that position because they were getting really angry and upset because nothing was working and they were getting nowhere, and they kept trying different things. They were actually nuking their own volcanoes to try and get the volcano activity to get it going, because they thought the volcanism was what was keeping their planet's atmosphere going. And They had all these ideas about what to do. Well, so they were building spaceships and they were sending them out and they weren't coming back. And then, like they said, they knew that there was gold in a broken bracelet. I think that's what they called it. So Alalu decides he's going to take the throne, and Anu's going to be challenges him and all this. They made a deal anyways, and then Alalu was not being cool, and Anu was getting tired of it. So Anu's challenged him, said, "Well, let's wrestle for it." They wrestle for it. Odd thing, they have to strip naked in order to be a fair fight, and Anu beats him and takes the throne, and Alalu thinks that he's that for sure Anu's going to have him offed, so he doesn't have to worry about him anymore. So he jumps in a ship, and the ship has nukes on it, and he takes off because he's afraid for his life. And I don't know, I think more he was looking to be the hero. So he takes off, and he already knows a lot of the history of the planets. These guys live for tens of thousands of years. So, I mean, they've got nothing to do but absorb knowledge and learn things, right? Amongst other things. So he takes off. He already knows a lot about the solar system and where he's going, what he's doing. He talks about the planets that he sees on his trip. And he comes up to the broken bracelet. And this is what's crazy is, so he's describing all these planets. Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, Saturn, Jupiter. And I'm like, okay, so how, if there isn't something to the story, how did they know everything about the solar system that we didn't even know until just recently? Pluto is a recent planet that we just found out about. Neptune, spinning on its side, he knew about that. He knew about the blue, and then there was Uranus, which was slightly more green, and then there was Saturn with its rings and its moons, and Jupiter with its moons and all that, and the asteroid belt. When did we find out about the asteroid belt? Crazy. So he gets the asteroid belt, and he's like, he knows that it's unclear. I think he's saying that he saw wreckage from when the other guys went to the asteroid belt. They're trying to get the gold, and maybe they were trying to harvest it from the asteroid belt. It's not real clear. But he decides he's got to get through this asteroid belt, so he comes up with this idea. He's just going to use some nukes. And he, throws a nuke at one of them, blasts it, and it kind of clears a spot out. He just dives through it, and I'm assuming it's scary because they don't have lights on their ship or something. It's unclear, but he gets through, and he finds Earth, and he gets to Earth, and he must not be a very good pilot because he kind of makes a circle around the Earth, and then he finds a spot, and he goes in, and he kind of crash lands, knocks him out. So he wakes up, goes out. He's got his eagle helmet on. They called it eagle helmet, and he takes his equipment out. He's got a gun and some testing equipment, and goes out, checks the atmosphere, and it's breathable. He's pretty stoked about that. He said it was cold out, so I'm assuming their planet was warmer, and he said it was cold, and he could feel the moisture, or they must have been barefoot or something. But anyways, he goes out and he's kind of exploring around, and he checks. It must have been southern Iraq, where Eden was, and they described Eden as kind of like a swampy, marshy area in the beginning, before the flood. And he said the water wasn't any good, but he could see the fish, you know. And then he decided to go back, and he got some food and water from the ship, and he takes a nap, and he wakes up the next day, goes out, sun's shining, he's out there, and he's looking around, he's doing some traveling, trying to, find things, and he finds a tree that has some fruit on it, and he takes a bite of this fruit. Yeah, you're going to find that there's a lot of weird parallels that have almost nothing to do with each other from the Bible Genesis story and this story. So he takes a bite of this fruit, and it's sweet, and he really enjoyed it, and he was very happy about that. And he gets to this place where there's water and reeds around it, and tests the water there, and it's drinkable, so he's happy about that, and he drinks some water. And then he hears a hissing sound, and the funny part about it, the story says he split in two, and I'm like thinking, okay, what does this mean? Did he actually split in two, or was he beside himself? Was it a, you know, he couldn't mean it literally. What's the other word for it? The only thing I could think of was when they say you jump out of your skin, and it kind of made a little bit of sense to me, but I was like, okay, whatever. So he sees this snake, and he blasts it, and he goes over and he inspects it, and he like talks about it. It's long, it has no legs, it's long like a rope, and it has evil eyes, and has a long forked tongue. And I was like, well, yeah, that's a pretty good description of a snake. Hissing too, right? So he goes back, and he's like doing some testing too for gold, and lo and behold, it shows up that there is gold. Not as much. There's more iron and copper than there is gold in his little test kit, but there was gold. So he sends a message back, and tells his home planet that he's found gold, and he comes up with this scheme of how he wants to be the hero, and he wants to get the throne back because he is going to save the planet by his deeds that he did. So he's concocting up this plan to take back the throne. He's the hero, and he's making a deal with them. And apparently, he was in one story. He was somewhere in the story. He was talking about like using the nukes to kind of, if they don't give him what he wants, he's gonna nuke them. Anyway, so everybody up on the planet is like, okay, could this be real? The Council of the Seven's like trying to figure things out, and is this possible? Well, send an envoy. So they sent Enki, because Enki is his son-in-law through marriage. So they didn't think he'd pull anything on him if he was like trying to be tricky or whatever. So they send Enki with the best pilot they got, but they didn't have any nukes on this ship. They had like water cannons or something. So they fill up with water, and they take off, and they get to the broken bracelet, and they use the water cannons to push these asteroids out of the way so that they could get a path through. They used up all their water, so they stopped at, they called it Lamu, which is Mars, and it had environment at the time and had water on it. And they stopped there to refuel. I'm going to have to stop here and get another one going. Love you guys, and see you in the next video.